These towns, the plants and the mills have closed, so people have even quit looking, and the unemployment is actually much higher. I want to be a governor who understands that the governor represents all communities all across Washington State. And we need to take the rich assets that we have and leverage them in a way that will generate family wage jobs in communities all across Washington. I want to be a governor who will fix our traffic mess. I grew up here on this side of the mountains. I went over to Yakima to really start my career and did international trade work for the apple industry. Came back to Seattle in 1992 and continued to build my own company that has grown over the last 24 years. And when the company got to a point where I didn't need to be there every day, I wanted to start giving back to my community, and I ran for a seat on the King County Seattle Port Commission. And I won in King County, and one of the very first things I started doing is working to make sure our transportation system worked. Because if you don't have a transportation system that works, you're not going to have middle-class jobs. When you can't identify a way to get your products from where it's being manufactured to where the customers are, or if your employees cannot move around, you're not going to expand your plant or locate it here. And that's what's happening right now. In just the last several months, I've had 3 CEOs tell me that they are not going to expand their plants or put them in Washington State because of a culture here that just is not very attractive to business, and one of the major obstacles is transportation. Let's have a governor who will dedicate himself to fixing our traffic mess so people can get to work on time and get home to see their families at a reasonable hour. As somebody who used to volunteer at a homeless shelter, I want us to dedicate ourselves to building a mental health system and a foster care system that meets the needs of some of the neediest among us. We're very fortunate tonight to have a woman who's doing that every day here in Thurston County. Mama Dee and I were in, the other night as feeding in downtown Olympia, and I know that you're doing it every Saturday morning, and that kind of service is an inspiration to many of us in this community. Go ahead. That's the kind of active involvement that we need in a governor. Someone who actually understands that we are relegating some of the most vulnerable in our society to the margins of society. And what I continue to tell people and policymakers around the state is to relegate some of the most vulnerable to the margins of society by enabling them to live in tents is not compassionate, it is not progressive, it's cruel. We need to begin providing these people with the services they need to pull their lives back together again, to get permanent housing, to get the job counseling and the drug counseling they need to begin to be a full member of our community once again. And as a governor, rebuilding our mental health system, rebuilding our foster care system, and providing the services that so many who are living in tents right now need is going to be a priority for me. And then I remember growing up over the Olympic Peninsula, and I was with a friend the other day out where I grew up in Lilywop. And we were by a creek which was right where I used to go to Cub Scouts. And the summer chum run were coming back. And they were there, but they weren't as thick as I remember them when we were building forts along that creek 40 years ago. They're there, but they're not quite in the same numbers. And I was talking to one of the managers at the hatchery right there, and I said, how much longer do we have for some of these steelhead runs on the Dr. Bush and the Hamma Hamma? And she said, you know, we have about 4 years before they go extinct. Think about that. I mean, this is something that I grew up with. It was a part of my childhood, and in 4 years, it might be gone. That's why it's so tragic that over the last 4 years, we have fallen backwards by almost every environmental measure. That was 4 years we did not have to lose, and we do not have another 4 years to lose if we want to protect an icon of our culture and our environment. And I want to dedicate myself to ensuring that every fall, for generations to come, the salmon and the steelhead return thick as they did when I was a child. But fulfilling that vision of really working to ensure that we have family wage jobs in communities all across Washington State, that we have an education system that gives every kid an equal chance to get ahead, that we have a transportation system that keeps good family wage jobs here, that we care to rebuild our foster care and our social services to provide for the most vulnerable in our midst, and also to care for our environment and be good stewards so that the salmon come back thick for generations to come. That's going to require an activist, engaged governor. That's the kind of governor I want to be. someone who is not afraid to go into difficult issues, and who's adept at building coalitions and delivering results. This is not a partisan, mine is not a partisan or an ideological agenda. It's just about all of us, Republicans and Democrats and independents coming together so that people can get a good job here and build a house and buy a house here and raise a family here and retire here in this natural beauty that we all love and want to protect. And so if that's the kind of agenda and the kind of governor you want, I'm asking tonight for your vote. Thank you.